This might be the most ridiculous thing that I have ever done. The cabinet is great. I love it. It works great. But what I'm about to do to it is completely unnecessary. But I love it. I built this cabinet last year as a stand for my planer, and it's been wonderful. There's plenty of storage. I've got six large, deep, long drawers in here. I keep all the stuff from my table saw, my blades, and everything in it. A lot of extra stuff that would normally just be on a flat surface somewhere. But this cabinet has been great. I'll put a link in the description where you can pick up a copy of the plans for this if you're interested. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm just taking everything apart, taking the leveling feet off of it here so I can get it ready for paint. Sanding. I just love sanding. I don't know how anyone could not love sanding. Standing in one spot, sometimes for hours at a time, making very little noticeable difference. It's just wonderful. I like to use Dridex to fill nail holes in painted projects. It works better than anything I've ever tried before. If you've never used it, you should give it a shot. I numbered the drawers when I took them out. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the drawer fronts off and numbering them in a certain way so that when I go to put them back on, I'll know exactly where they go and how they go. I just really didn't want to take all of these drawer slides off and try to keep up with all the screws, and it just seemed like it'd be a big hassle, so I just decided to tape them up. Have you ever wondered how much of our life we waste just throw away time just sanding? It's ready to paint. All I gotta do is clean it up, take it outside, spray it down. Now that that's done, we can move on to building a completely unnecessary red oak top. I've been doing YouTube now for about 6 months, just a touch over 6 months. So, and you guys have been great. I really appreciate all of you. I'm closing in on 100 subscribers, so if you guys like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave me a comment. Let me know if you like what you see or not. I bought this red oak at the Home Depot. Typically their lumber is very consistent, at least the oak in our area, but this was different thicknesses, so I had to use the planer. It's just kind of satisfying using the planer to build the top. Just gonna hold the planer. I don't know, it's the circle of life, I guess. So I'm gonna try this a little bit different. First I'm gonna do the typical, you glue up one side, lay it down, everything. But instead of using cawls, I'm gonna try to straighten it out and see if I can get it perfect without the cawls. Let me know in the comments below, are you a wipe the glue off before it dries or the scrape it off after it dries kind of woodworker? Well, what do you think? Did it work? That was a terrible idea. Luckily, I have this Porter cable belt sander that I bought a couple of years ago when I did something else stupid. Okay, so the way that I do my tabletops, first thing I do is I draw lines on them with a pencil so that I know how far to sand. I use a carpenter's pencil because it has a thicker lead and it doesn't groove it as bad. It tends to work a little bit better for me. But anyway, so I go through this 2 times with 80 grit, then once with 150. Once I'm about halfway through the 150, I'll stop and I'll cut my top down to size. If you guys don't have one of these Craig AccuCuts, I highly suggest you get one. I have a video where I reviewed this thing and it's great. It's probably one of the most used tools in my shop. Once it's cut to size, I'm going to grab my trim rider and put a 1/4 inch round over on the top. Now you always want to start with the end grain first because sometimes you get tear out on the corners, and if you do, it will be fixed when you put the round over on the long grain. So once that's done, you want to clean the top off pretty good. You want to blow all of those chips off. If you don't, then and you try to sand over the top of those, you would get huge gouges all over your top. And don't ask me how I know that. So now I'm going to grab a sheet of 150 and I'm going to clean up these edges real good, and I'm going to kind of break the edges on the bottom and the corners. So now that that's all done, I'm going to grab my ROS. I'm going to get the rest of these pencil marks out with a 150. Then I'll clean it up real good with some paint thinner, and then it's ready for finish. So now everything is finished. Let's start putting this thing back together. I'm going to mount the top by drilling holes through the top of the carcass and screwing it in from the bottom. But the holes that I drill in the front and the back, I'm going to elongate so that as the wood expands and contracts, it doesn't bind. The concrete in my shop is awful. I talked about that in my shop tour video. But with it being so bad, these leveling feet are an absolute necessity. Now I'm going to flip this thing upside down and walk around in circles with a tape measure for 20 minutes until it's centered. Make sure to mark your depth with a piece of tape on your drill bit, and always check that on some scrap first. Don't ask me how I know this. Is it just me, or does everyone find it very satisfying to pull the tape? Look at the size of that tape ball. So all that's left to the carcass is just vacuum out all the sawdust and spiders and put it in place. All we have left is the drawer fronts. I'm going to put the pull screws in from the back to line up the drawer front. Screw it in from the back. Put the handle on, start it with a screwdriver, finish it up with an impact. So I'll be the first one to admit that this was completely unnecessary. Other than finally putting all the drawer pulls on this cabinet, I have not accomplished anything that makes it more functional at all. But I believe it's all about the state of mind. I've been coming in this shop almost daily for I don't know how long, especially when I was in here building to sell. You just walk in, it's unorganized, it's kind of a mess, and sometimes it just kind of felt like a chore. But doing these little things, it changed that. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.